Good evening and welcome to tonight's class. So, to get ready for tonight's snow, I figured we'd get in the spirit of winter wonderland, a little Christmas songs. So, we're going to wait for people to sign in. Welcome, welcome. So, please sign in. Bells ring, making spirits bright. What fun it is to laugh and sing a sleighing song. So everybody hunker down for a night of white stuff. I think we probably should skip a couple lessons and move to driving emergencies, which is next week, or driving in hazardous conditions, which is next Wednesday. That's kind of right before Christmas Eve. Welcome, welcome. Sign in. Remember to sign in on your phone. I have received quite a few posters, and I was amazed by the videos. I just saw one just came in. I haven't been able to view. Whoever sent me just a video just a moment ago, I was just doing some things here at my desk, and I haven't been able to view it. But I will. I told you I was going to give you till next week, to next Monday to finish it. But I guess since you didn't have much for schoolwork today, we will see one of the videos that I thought was just fantastic. I mean, he knocked it out of the park. I'm not going to mention his name. You probably know who he is because he's in the video. But it will now make the rotation of one of my favorite videos. So I think I'm going to get out of the Christmas spirit here. There we go. So let's turn that down a little bit. I'm going to try to see if this comes up. So bear with me just a little bit. I think we've got just about everybody here. But let's see if we can get my screen. Oh, there we go. All right. Now let's see if this works. I think you can see everything. So this, let's see if I can bring it up here just a little bit. Hold on. Okay, let's see if this works. This is the video.
I don't need a seatbelt. I'm a good driver. That's a backup. I guess I'm gonna be here a while.
Now that's what I'm talking about. Now that is a fantastic use of the information about statistics and getting an image of why it's important to have seatbelts on. I was really impressed with the quality of the video. That was fantastic. Very good. So kudos and extra credit coming your way. One of the things that we didn't see last night, and it's the last thing that we're going to talk about with safety equipment, is a video that I found probably about 6-7 years ago. And it's probably the most scientific, involved video that I have. And I pared it down a little bit. I believe it's like 13, 14 minutes long. It's one of the longest videos that I have in driver's ed. But I really liked it because it really drives home the importance of being in your seatbelt and having airbags, because you need all the protection that you can get in a crash. And what I want you to write down, and I want you to text me the answer so I know that you watched the video. So what I want you to do, let's see if I can get this on the screen here. There are 3 types of collisions. Let's see if I can get it up. So there are 3 collisions. Anytime your car hits something else, you're going to see in this video clip, it's going to be blank to blank will be one collision. Then it will be blank to something else. And then the last collision, blank to blank. All right. Now, they're going to talk about science. They're going to talk about physics. And then they're going to get into the biological impact on the human body. There's no blood and guts in this, so I don't want you to freak out. But they are going to show you what they test vehicles. The other thing I want you to realize is that if you ever want to save money in insurance, always look for a vehicle that has the highest safety rating. Now, it may not be at the top of your list. Most people, when they think of vehicles, they think about the image. What do they want to do with the vehicle? Do they want to go off-road? Do they want a convertible? Do they want a truck because they've got a part-time job mowing lawns? That stuff is all important. But within your category of vehicle that you want to buy, always make sure that you research and find the crash rating. That is going to not only make you safer when you drive, it's going to give you a lower insurance premium. Your rates will be lower. All right. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Now, I'm going to show the video and take notes along the way, and we'll review these 3 crashes.
Why is it that some spectacular race car crashes produce only minor injuries? How can 3 collisions occur in this one crash between a car and a wall? The answers are determined by the laws of nature and can best be explained when physics meets biology. Through injury biomechanics, the study of the effects of forces on the human body, we've learned much about what happens in high-speed race car crashes, and doctors and engineers have used this information to build safer race cars and tracks. In a similar way, the study of injury biomechanics and crash testing has helped us learn what happens to the human body in passenger car crashes, and what works and doesn't work to reduce injuries and deaths in real-world crashes.
Hi, I'm Griff Jones. I'm a science teacher, and I'm here at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety's Vehicle Research Center to explore the basic science behind injuries in vehicle crashes. So let's go behind the scenes and take a closer look at what happens to the human body in a crash. What is the first scientific discipline that comes to mind when you think of car crashes? It's probably physics, right? Because Newton's laws of motion govern what happens to a vehicle in a crash. But if we want to understand how crashes cause injuries to people, we need to look at what occurs when physical forces are applied to organs, tissues, and cells. This happens when physics meets biology in a field called injury biomechanics.
The Institute's Vehicle Research Center is a world-class facility for vehicle research and testing. A reporter described the crash hall with its 3 runways as a cross between a Hollywood soundstage and a NASA clean room. Vehicles are propelled down the runways at precise speeds, using a system of nitrogen-powered hydraulic motors and cables. The lighting array provides up to 750,000 watts of non-glare illumination for the 500 frames per second high-speed cameras. The research tests they're conducting here today focuses on how injuries occur in real-world crashes. This experimental crash replicates one in which a car hit a tree. In an attempt to understand injury patterns found in the occupants of the actual crash, researchers have disconnected the airbags.
Looking at the driver's chest, we can see the chest deflection reached about 50 millimeters of compression. The chest accelerations 70 to 80 G resultant acceleration range. High likelihood of skull fracture.
Very bad.
Yeah, very bad.
Figuring out what just happened in this test crash is the job of the research engineers here. Using sophisticated tools like instrumented crash test dummies, instrumentation in the car, and slow-motion film, they can analyze every detail and construct a precise picture of exactly what the vehicle and the occupants went through.
When research engineers use terms like the chest deflection reached about 50 millimeters, how does that relate to what a human occupant would experience? If chest acceleration is 70 to 80 Gs, which means that a force equivalent to 70 to 80 times the weight of the dummy's chest is pressing on it, is that survivable? How do these guys know the answers?
The search for the limits of human tolerance to forces began decades ago. Today's race car and passenger car drivers benefit from biomechanics studies that were conducted during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s in the field of aviation, investigating how to protect pilots and astronauts from the strenuous forces of ejections in high-speed travel. Colonel John Stapp, a medical doctor and biophysicist in the United States Air Force, used himself as the test subject in his investigations of human tolerance to high G environments.
From the outside, watch the breakneck stop.
In one of his many tests, Dr. Stapp reached a speed of 632 miles per hour before one of the most powerful braking systems of all time stopped him in 1.4 seconds, subjecting him to more than 40 times the pull of gravity, or 40 Gs. His research helped establish the limits of human tolerance to high G environments and saved many lives through development and improvement of protective systems for ejection seats. Realizing the Air Force lost nearly as many men to car crashes as they did to plane crashes, Dr. Stapp began a car crash program using the rocket sled for seatbelt experiments. Human volunteers working with his biophysics research team endured as many as 28 Gs during safety belt tests.
This early research laid the foundation for the complex crash analysis that is conducted here today.
These dummies are a perfect example of combining science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to produce new tools that extend scientific understanding. They are the modern-day version of Dr. Stapp's volunteers. There's not just one dummy for VRC testing, nor even one type. There's a whole family of dummies for crash testing.
This is our crash test dummy family, ranging from a 6-month-old all the way up to a 95th percentile male.
95th percentile of what?
That means that it is larger than 95% of the male population in the U.S.
Wow, so this is a big guy.
Yes, if he could stand, he would be about 6'2", about 223 pounds, pretty big. The female, if she could stand, about 5 foot tall, 107 pounds.
How about the smaller dummies?
They're called crabbies.
Crabbies.
Are they moody? They're not moody, but it stands for child restraint airbag interaction.
And so when we're doing the frontal crash test, it's 50th percentile?
Yes.
Okay. Side impact is the small female.
Side impact dummy is a very complicated dummy. It has the most instrumentation. They have sensors from the head to the toe. The accelerometers give us the acceleration of the mass. The load cell measures force. And then we have the potentiometers that measure the displacement. The ribs actually move.
So dummies are very sophisticated. They provide data from many different body regions. But how do we connect this to people? What is the link between all these crash test data and the injuries that people experience in real-world crashes?
The dummy is measuring different things. It's measuring acceleration, force, and in some cases distortion of the body parts. Those measurements can be compared against similar measurements made in experiments on biological tissues, using either animal models or cadaver models to get an idea of how much stress can this body part take before it breaks. So in order to understand whether or not a person would be injured, you need to know how strong the bones are, how strong the tissues are, and what conditions will cause them to break.
So the crash test dummies try to get a clearer picture of what's really happening to the people. Is that where the term biofidelity comes from?
It's exactly where the term biofidelity comes from. What biofidelity means is the characteristic of the dummy that represents how close to actually being a human being it is. So the higher the biofidelity, the more like a human being it is in representing how it moves, what types of stresses it measures in the crash test, and then the true-to-lifeness of those measurements to the prediction of injury in a real person.
This is how research engineers can tell us with precision what a human occupant would have experienced in a test crash. Dr. Stapp's experiments, plus years of research with real biological tissues from cadavers and animals, have produced a set of reference values against which we can compare the stresses and strains the dummies experience. So we can measure these in a test crash and can figure out if they would cause injury to a human occupant.
But what do these stresses and strains actually do to people to cause injury?
Let's start with some basic anatomy. Your body contains over 100 trillion cells and is structurally organized into 4 levels: cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. Tissue is a group of similar cells working together to perform a common function. Organs are made up of 2 or more types of tissue working together to perform a specific function. And each organ is part of at least one organ system that performs major activities or processes. Your body contains 4 fluid-filled spaces called body cavities that house and protect your major internal organs. Within the body cavities, your organs are suspended in fluid that supports their weight and prevents them from being deformed by normal movements. Your organs are also protected by your bones and muscles. For example, your heart and lungs are protected by your rib cage and sternum inside the thoracic cavity. Your brain is encased within your cranial cavity and is protected by your skull. Now, with this as background, remember the question from the beginning of this film. How is it possible to have 3 collisions in a single crash? Remember, the laws of physics hold true everywhere. On a highway, on a racetrack, and even inside your body. If a race car is going 200 miles per hour, so is the driver's body and every organ inside it. Let's answer the question. The first collision is between the car and the wall. The second is between the driver and the car's interior. And the third is between the driver's internal organs and the inside walls of his or her body cavities.
Tell me a little bit more about the injury.
To help us understand more about what happens to organs in the third collision, let's meet Dr. Stephen Olvey, a neurocritical care physician and director of the Neuroscience Intensive Care Unit at the University of Miami's Jackson Memorial Hospital.
Basically, during a crash, you have 3 collisions. You have the initial crash of the vehicle.
Then you have the occupant hitting something inside the car and coming to a sudden stop.
This results in impacts inside the body. For example, the lungs can hit the inside of the rib cage, the heart can hit the breastbone or inside of the rib cage, resulting in either pulmonary contusion or myocardial contusion. This is what causes ruptured spleens, lacerated livers, because you have part of the organ well anchored and the other part is free to move about. And this causes a shearing force to take place in the organ, resulting in hemorrhage or tearing of the tissue. The brain is enclosed in a rigid case, the skull, and it's cushioned and surrounded by the cerebral spinal fluid. The cerebral spinal fluid is actually a different density than the brain itself, so in the event of an impact to the skull, the brain begins to move, the cerebral spinal fluid begins to move, but it moves at a different rate than the brain. So it will actually displace the brain in the opposite direction of the initial impact to the brain.
This simple experiment helps illustrate the phenomenon. This represents your skull. There's water inside representing your cerebral spinal fluid, and the red gel is your brain. The gel floats because it's less dense than water, just like your brain is less dense than your cerebral spinal fluid.
What do you think will happen to the brain during impact? Will it move forward, backward, or stay in the same spot? Let's see. The initial movement of the brain is toward the back of the skull. The more dense cerebral spinal fluid moves toward the side of the skull impact, displacing the brain in the opposite direction. If the impact is strong enough, the brain will initially impact the back wall of the skull, then rebound and hit the front of the skull.
This type of injury is called the coup contre coup, which is a French term meaning blow against blow. The order of events inside the skull is still debated in the medical community. Whether the more dense fluid displaces the brain in the opposite direction first, or whether the brain moves in the direction of the initial impact first and then is displaced by a wave of spinal fluid, is not yet fully understood. By the way, this simple experiment was designed by a high school student for her science fair project. It was later published in a medical journal and has contributed to the debate. Crash injuries occur when stress develops in tissue. Another way this happens is when one part of the tissue or organ is firmly attached to the torso and another part is free to move. For example, with the heart and its blood vessels, the ascending aorta and its arch are mobile, while the descending aorta is fixed. Here's a demonstration of how a sudden stop, like a third collision, can cause an acceleration injury to the aorta. The aortic arch is represented by the unsupported gel. The gel inside the tube represents the descending aorta, which is fixed to the body.
Try to predict what will happen during the collision. The unsupported section of gel continues forward and tears away from the supported gel. During an actual collision, the fixed descending aorta will decelerate along with the body, while the arch and ascending aorta's momentum keep them moving forward. This difference in acceleration or deceleration causes a tear where the fixed and mobile parts meet. Even the inertia of a blood-filled heart can cause stress and strain on the aortic arch.
We've been talking about stress and strain on tissues and organs.
Okay, let's kind of go through, and most of you do have the answer correct, so that's great that you were able to get those three collisions. So let's kind of break this down a little bit, and why did I actually show you this video, and what do I want you to get from it? So the first collision is the car to a wall, or it could be to any object, all right? So that's the first one. The second would be the driver to the interior of the vehicle, and the third is your body organs to the inside of your body cavity. So let's kind of go backwards, all right? One of the important things about having your seatbelt on, having a car with airbags, being back a distance from everything, is we want that ride down. We want our body to absorb a lot of the impact, because if it doesn't, our internal organs, as we saw in that last portion of the clip, is that your heart is still moving at the speed that when the car was actually struck, and there's going to be some ripping or tearing of ligaments, muscles, and organs, and we're going to have internal bleeding. Now, once you're involved in a car crash, I don't know how many people have been in a car crash, you're pretty shooken up. This is why it's so important to go see a doctor, because we don't know the extent of those injuries internally. We don't see blood from the outside, but the blood could be leaking from the inside. Now let's kind of break this down, why this is so important. Now think about this. How much control do you have over your car hitting another object? Do you have a lot of control, some control, or no control? You have a lot of control. People can drive years without being involved in a car crash. Our goal to drive is to be safe, is not to be involved in a crash. So I think in your lifetime, you're probably going to be able to count in one hand over 50, 60 years of driving that you'll be involved in a car crash. It's not going to happen that often. Now, if it is, then maybe it's your driving and what I'm teaching you and what you're learning. But you shouldn't be involved in a lot of crashes, so you have a lot of control. Now, how much control do you have over your body hitting the interior of your car? You have some control, all right? You can have your seatbelt on. You can buy a car with have airbags. You could have a car that has a good safety rating. But like we said, if you don't have the belt on right, you've got the belt on, but it's not on right. You have airbags, but you're in a truck, but you turned it off. So you have some control. All right? Now, the last one, where the organs hitting the inside of your body cavity, you have no control. So what you see is you've got control at the beginning, and you have none at the end. So you're losing it in the crash. So if you really want to prevent those injuries and for those things happening, then you've got to take a lot of effort in being a good driver, because you have the most control at the beginning. Most control at the beginning of not hitting other things. Even if someone drifts into your lane, you have a lot of control of getting out of the path of someone coming towards you. You can steer, you can brake, you can accelerate, you can minimize what is going to happen. So that's our goal, is to make you the best possible driver, so we don't have to worry about those two other things coming to play. But if you do get hit, this is why we had this little segment in Driver's Ed on seatbelts, airbags, and helmets, is that's why we've got to make sure that we go down to the next level. We've done what we can with being belted, airbags, buying a good car. So that is it on safety equipment. Now for tonight's topic, let's kind of talk about vehicle movement and placement on the roadway. And as I said last night, tonight's class, unfortunately, is not going to have kind of the fun videos and things that, that I like to interject into my classes. So it's going to be more of a writing and note-taking and thinking about the whole a process of understanding the science and movement of the vehicle and how can we make you better behind the wheel. So here are some things that I want you to think about. In a car, there are three things, and movement of a vehicle, because it's mechanical, is very scientific. So if we take a look at the movement of a vehicle, three things will happen when you start to put it in motion. It will pitch, it can roll, and it can yaw. So our goal is to make sure that we're staying between the center line and the edge line at a good speed, a decent speed, a posted speed limit, and not having any problems with the balance and movement of our vehicle. So I want you to write down these terms. So I think you've heard me talk about pitch. If you've driven with me by now, you know when we come to a stop sign, I ask you, make sure the car pitches forward. So that is the movement of your vehicle going forward and then coming backwards, which we call a resting stop. Okay. Now you can pitch either forward, that's in braking, or if the car pitches backwards, that's because of acceleration. So when you hit that gas pedal, slightly harder than normal, the car is going to kick backwards. If you're in a manual transmission, as we talked about last night, you pop the clutch, you're going to be pitching. All right. Roll is when the vehicle's weight shifts to one side or the other. The best example I can give you about roll is if you've ever taken an off-ramp off a highway, and it's almost a 360 off-ramp. If you're taking it higher than the recommended speed, everybody in the vehicle is going to lean to one side. So think of roll as leaning the vehicle, so the right side of the vehicle is going to be lower, the left side is going to be higher. On a left-hand turn, the left side is going to be lower, the right side of the vehicle is going to be higher. All right, so we want to eliminate that transfer of weight on a vehicle. That way we can keep our tires on the pavement with equal pressure on all four tires. Yaw is a little bit more difficult to explain. It's almost like roll and a little bit like pitch, if that makes any sense. So what I'm talking about, let's take a look at a vehicle. If you can think of a square, okay, or a rectangle, because that's what a vehicle is. If the front left corner is making a left-hand turn, so you're going to be pitching down on that left front corner of the vehicle, the back right side of your vehicle is going to be lifting up. So it's on a diagonal, okay, of where the weight transference is going to be. So what is going to happen on a left-hand turn where you're pitching in the front left, lifting up on the back right, is that your back end is going to slide out to the right. You're going to basically, that's the beginning of a 360. So when you're driving in bad weather and your car starts to slide, it could be because the motion or the pitching of your vehicle in the front and the lifting up of the back is preventing the back tires gripping the road, and you're going to start flying out to the right or flying out to the left, depending on which way you're going to be turning. So I know that's kind of complicated, and I don't have any visuals for that. So I'm going to show you some slides that the state basically developed. And we basically have already talked about this, but what I want you to write down is the word pitch and what causes people to pitch the vehicle. One is inexperience, is just not being able to use the brake at the right pressure. No fault of your own. If you haven't driven much, because your parents have to take you out in order for you to get that experience. But even if you've driven a lot, it could be the last bullet here, the sign of not being familiar with a vehicle. So it's not you, it's just the vehicle you haven't driven a lot. You're not accustomed to it. And then the middle one is pitching can happen according to what your emotions. People that have problems controlling emotion will do things in extreme. They raise their voice louder than normal. They move a little bit quicker. Their arms flail. They talk with their arms. They get really kind of animated. Well, you take that personality behind the wheel of a car, and you're going to see pitching more evident in your driving if you're emotional inside a car. And the picture over to the left, I'm not going to go through all of those, but notice the terminology that they've got listed. We've talked about all of this. We've talked about controlled braking, threshold braking, trail braking, light acceleration. So I'm not going to really go over that, but that was part of what we had last week. Now, when it comes to roll, what I want you to write down, it's going to be related to how fast you drive. Now, I want you to understand that speed limits are what we tend to follow, and we should follow. And we're going to have a segment on speed and braking a little bit later, I think next week. I want you to understand that just because the speed limit says 30, you don't have to go 30. If you find that your vehicle is losing its position, or it's leaning one side or the other, go slower. You basically want better balance of your vehicle, and that's usually accomplished with better speed. Now, road design, and I don't know if I've got this. I'll have to make a note here. I'm going to make a note to myself here if it doesn't come up on a bullet, that I don't know if I made this as a slide. But road design, I'll give you what the terminology is, and then I'll fill in the blanks. So write down crowned roadways, crowned, C-R-O-W-N-E-D, crowned roadways, and then write down banked, B-A-N-K, a banked roadway, all right? So that's going to be road design. Weather comes into play with roll, as we said earlier, and then you can feel the movement. As we said, the car is going to dip on one side or the other, and the body's going to move inside the vehicle, so you're going to know that you're losing some of your balance of the vehicle. Okay, here's yaw. Here's what I was trying to explain. The front left is going down. The back right is lifting up. So that back right is really not going to be gripping the roadway, and your car is going to fly out to the right. Okay, that is a perfect case scenario of a car that's going to spin out. It's going to lose traction and go off the roadway, off on the right. If you can, in your notes, and I want you to write this down, some of you that have driven a couple times and we were working on turns and we're, doing certain things, you'll hear me say things. This is the difficult thing about teaching class and then driving with you, and some of you getting a lot of driving times in and some of you don't, is that we go over this stuff in the car before you get it in class. And sometimes it's better to get it in class and then see how it applies out on the roadway. So I want you to make the diagram of cornering where the car has 3 arrows. So draw a roadway that's going off to the left. Make the car on the right side of a roadway, and then make those 3 arrows. Okay? What I want you to think about, right where those 3 lines come together, that is the middle of what they call the apex. So if you don't want to write the word apex, write the word middle. That is the middle of the turn. What I want you to take away from this slide, and what I want you to do when you drive with me and drive with your parents, I always want you to remember you should be on your brake pedal before the turn and braking through the turn until your back bumper gets to the middle. So your body has to be beyond the apex, the middle part of the turn. Anytime that you let go of the brake before your body gets beyond that point, the car is going to push to the right. The earlier you let go of the brake, or the faster that you go, going back to the accelerator, the more you're going to go to where that red line is. And what inertia is, it's really science. That's science. A car in movement stays in movement. So a car going straight, if you don't put any movement to the turning of the steering wheel, you will continue to go straight. Even if you're turning the wheel a little bit to the left, but you're going too fast, you're still going to go towards that red line, basically. You want to go where the green line is. In your mind, this is the hard part, and this is where we're going to try to flip the switch with most of you. In your mind, you probably know how you want to drive, where you should be positioning the vehicle. And the blue line is where you're actually driving with me, which means is that where you want to go and where science is going to take you, you got to split the two, and this is where you go over the white edge line. So if you're making a turn too wide, like in this case, in the blue line, it's that you think you are going where you're supposed to be going and you know where you want to go, but science is kind of taking that a little bit away from you, and it's taking you in that blue line area. Now, the way to solve that is, as I said earlier, is that you're braking until your body gets beyond the middle point. If you're braking before that point and turning with the right amount of steering, you will stay in your lane perfectly in your lane. Any change of speed, any change of correction of the wheel, and it's just not going to happen. The other thing that I want you to take a look at, most people don't realize this, and it's more so in the summertime, is that your rubber of your tire is attached to what we call the rim. That's where your hubcap is. It's secured to the rim of your wheel. Anytime that your tire is flexing, like we see the bottom picture, there is probably a leakage of air. And they say tire flexion. Okay, this is why we lose air in our tires, is how we abuse our turns. So if you're not taking a turn appropriately, there's going to be more flexion, and you're going to lose tire pressure because you're really kind of beating on your vehicle. So go slower, and you're not going to have the flexion of the tire, and you're not going to be losing air. Your tires are going to last a lot longer, and you will be a better driver. Okay? But if we were to take a look at a tire that's being pushed to its limits, you're going to be really breaking down the structure of that tire, and air will be leaking from it. So back to road design, because apparently I don't have it up here. Let's see if I can put it on my, let me erase my board here. Hold on a second. I'm going to show you an example of crowned and banked. My little whiteboard, my little hold up here. So let me make it. Almost done. Hang with me. Okay, let me get out of here for a second. All right, so what I want you to diagram, the top one is crowned. So notice the double yellow line is at the top, and the roadway slopes on either side. That is a crowned roadway. A banked roadway is low on one side, and it goes high on the opposite. And actually, the double yellow line is right in the middle. So this is a roadway that is banked to the left. So that is a roadway banked to the left. It would be the opposite if it was being banked to the right. And the two things, or that is accomplished with road design, and we talked about the HTS and why it's so important. A crowned roadway allows for drainage of water. The worst enemy of a roadway is water. So water is going to be drifting off to the side. Have you ever noticed that most of the bad areas on a roadway, potholes and cracks and stuff, are over near the white line? It's because the water drifting off to the side, freezing, thawing throughout the year, and it's really doing damage to the roadway off to the right. Banked roadway, same thing. It allows you to go into a turn at a little slighter than faster speeds than you probably would if it was a plain flat road, which we really don't make flat roads. Everything is a little bit crowned. But it also helps with drainage. Okay, so drainage and able to make decent turns. This is terminology the state came up with. I'm going to give it to you. So I want you to write it down. Just be familiar with it. Target is what you're aiming for. So you see in the picture, it's got a little circle. You're looking way down the road. They're trying to simplify driving, I think, a little bit more than they have to. But I guess they're assuming there are going to be some people that haven't done much driving, or they have some real issues of keeping their car centered in their lane. So they came up with some of this stuff. So I'm not a big fan of a lot of the terminology here, and this is why I made my own slides here. So I'm going to kind of go through them kind of quickly. So write down target and write down it's what you're aiming for. So if your steering wheel was a face of a clock, basically 12 o'clock would be the sight line, and that is where you're aiming your vehicle. So if you're aiming for that circle, and if we take a look at that green swath of paint on the roadway, that is your target path. So on the left side would be where the left tire would be. If we go all the way over to the right side, that's where the right tire would be. And if we had a sprayer of paint underneath our vehicle, we would be spraying that big, long path of green paint down the roadway. So we're tracking down the road correctly here, going towards that target. So notice the little black mark on the steering wheel. You're aiming it to where you want to go. So if you're not aiming it correctly, what they're trying to say is this is why you're going over the yellow line or over the white line, right? Let's take a look at a car that's off target, okay? So if we were to line up that black mark on the steering wheel, we're going to hit the mailbox eventually. We're basically going just to the right of that mailbox. We're not going towards that circle. So what we need to do is to change the position of that black mark. 12 o'clock has to move to the right slightly. Now we are on target. Now we're going down the road. So if any of you are having issues with your parents about tracking down the roadway, try to focus on something between the yellow line and the right edge of the road and bring that 12 o'clock position in line right with that item. So in this case, it looks like a mailbox. So why are we really talking about target path? Is that a lot of times you have to realize, and if you did your reading, chapter 6 and 7 in the textbook talked about vision, and it talked about options and choices. Driving really begins with your eyesight. If you don't see well, you're going to make mistakes. So the first thing is really getting behind the wheel of a car and being able to see. I mean, think about it. That's why we don't teach people that are blind, okay, or partially blind, is that they can't filter and pick up information quick enough and process it to make correct decisions. So how to look, where to look, what to look for. Write those down. That is so key in becoming a good driver. How to look. Okay, what do you mean how to look? I'm looking out the window. Yeah, but you've got to know, basically, you're looking for intersections. You're looking for road signs. You're looking for traffic lights. You're looking for possible problems down the road. Anybody can drive on a road that's straight where you know that there's going to be no conflict, meaning no other cars crossing left or right, or no change of speed, or no slowing down. So it's tracking down a highway. To me, driving on the highway is the boringest place to drive. And this is one of the reasons why I don't really go into a highway drive with you until our 7th or 8th time out driving. Because the hardest thing is getting onto the highway. Once you've accomplished that, it's driving in a straight line, mostly. I mean, you may make a few lane changes, but lane changes we do around our 4th or 5th time out driving. But once you've got that down, it's boring. Okay, where to look, what to look for. Be very careful when making a lane change, because here we no longer want to be in the left lane. We want to go over to the right lane to make a turn at the right light. You're going to be focusing on that gray truck, on his license plate. And remember, a lot of times where you look is where your hands are going to slightly steer towards. And write this down, put a star next to this, okay? There's nothing when you go for your driving test that will warrant a mark off is if you're making a lane change and you start drifting into the lane that you're going into before you've finished all your checks. So write that down. Keep your hands still, tracking or going towards the target path in your lane while you're making your checks before you move to the right lane. You only turn the wheel to the right after you've checked your rearview mirror, side right mirror, shoulder, check to the right. Then you start moving your hands. A lot of people will move their hands slightly when they get to the blind spot check. They keep their hands still for a rear view mirror check, side view mirror check, but then they kind of slide a little bit prematurely. You don't want that to happen. So here's some more terminology that the state wants you to kind of be familiar with. So write down LOS, POT. LOS stands for line of sight. POT stands for path of travel. And what we're trying to do you have a problem? Is there a problem up ahead for the driver? Does the driver have necessary time and space to handle that problem? If I was to tell you that you have 2 weeks to do a 2-page report for driver's ed, although you would probably be very upset that I'm giving you work over the Christmas break, you're thinking 2 weeks, I got plenty of time to do that. It's only 2 pages. It's not going to be that big of a deal. If I said you got 2 pages due tomorrow, you're going to go, oh my goodness, that's a lot. I'm not going to be able to do it. Driving's the same way. The more time that you have to do something, the easier it becomes. You can process the information a little bit more thoroughly. And if a mistake is being made, you usually have time to correct it. But when you have to make a decision quickly, you've got to make that decision spot on, perfect, because you don't have time to readjust and make another change. So we're going to take a look at what is some of the line of sight blockages that we have. What are some of the path of travel blockages or restrictions that we may have? So let's take a look at some of the issues that we're going to have out on the road. The first one I want you to write down with sight is your environment. We've already canceled out driving for tomorrow. I said I'm not going to drive with any of you. It's not that I don't trust you. I think it would be a pretty good experience at some point during the snow, whether it be at the beginning or after they plow it slightly and get out on the road. I'm fine with that. But for the most part, being the first storm, I think we probably should take the day off. But weather conditions cause problems for vision. And I was telling a few of you that drove today, you're going to lose your lines. Whoever's driving on Friday, and by the way, remember, if you want to drive on Friday, you got to text me and let me know. But whoever wants to drive on Friday, we're going to have issues with lines. Even though they plowed the road tomorrow, it's going to take a while for the sun to penetrate and start thawing out the road. There are going to be patches of snow that are covering your lines. And for a moment, you're going to go, where do I need to be on the road? I cannot tell where I should be. That's where you've got to use the tire marks of other cars in front of you, or if there is a car, tracking directly behind the car that's in front of us. Curves, hills, intersections, definite problems of seeing where the road goes. And by the way, tomorrow snowbanks are going to be bad. Buildings, bridges, fences, of course they block your vision. There are ways that we can adapt to get better vision in these situations, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Bushes, signs, billboards, trees, all these things we need to start thinking about. How does it relate to what we're doing with driving? And never settle for bad vision. Write that down. Never settle for bad vision. Before you make a choice, you have to know that you can cross an intersection or turn right or turn left. You don't want to be guessing. Not in driving. So you have to increase your vision line, your line of sight. Other parked cars will block your view. Buses next to you at the bottom of an off-ramp, especially. If they're higher than you, you can't see through their windows because they're up an extra foot higher than you. You just got to wait for them to move. Stop slow-moving vehicles, vehicles entering from different roadways. How about path of travel? How does the environment affect that? red lights, stop signs, yield signs. We're being restricted on going through intersections, so we have to understand what these signs and signals mean, and basically that's going to be tomorrow's class. What are your intersections? Do I have a two-way stop, four-way stop? Is my road extremely narrow? Should I wait for a car to go by before I continue on? If you know the road is rough or if it's bumpy, don't go the speed limit. Go slower because we're going to have problems with balance. And then, of course, rain, snow, ice, water, all that stuff, sand, gravel, oil, leaves, all these things will have some effect on our tires gripping the roadway. So we have to visualize up ahead, I have a problem. Around the corner, I have a problem. So you're evaluating how you're going to handle the sand on the road, how you're going to handle the puddle in the road. So you're changing your position, you're changing your speed. I've had some of you, we've had some bad situations like potholes, and I swear you don't even see them. Maybe you don't even care, I don't know. But we made no attempt to miss the pothole. At least I didn't feel it, didn't see it. And bam, you can feel the tire just go right into it and come right out of it. Okay, you've got to work your way around some of these bad spots on the roadway. I know it's my car. I know, and for some of you it doesn't matter. But when it's your vehicle and you've got to pay for alignment or pay for a new tire if it pops, then it's going to be real. Then it's going to be, now it's important. Okay, same thing with a parent car. You may think, oh, my parents will pay for it. But eventually, it's going to be on your dime. Slow-moving vehicles, turning, park cars should be, and this is a big one, make sure that you're always at least 4 seconds behind somebody. When I first started teaching driver's ed, they said, don't get any closer than 2 seconds. That was the following distance they told us to teach. Tell your students they should never be closer than 2 seconds. Stay 2 seconds behind the person in front. And then probably about 10 years ago, it changed to 3. And when the new manual came out, probably it's a little over a year now. Guess what? The new manual says 4 seconds. They keep increasing it. Now, it does make sense. More time means more space, and it does make you a little bit safer. But I'm finding that most people don't do the 4. I think 3 is probably pretty good. But in bad weather, or if you're a new driver, I can understand that extra second. Does give you a little bit more comfort, makes things just a little bit easier to handle things on the roadway. So just remember, more space is better space. All right? But on your driving test, make sure you answer 4 seconds and make sure that you try to put it into practice. And we'll talk more about that probably today. Now, I do want you to do this diagram. You have 6 quadrants, all right, around your vehicle. And this is all, stuff that, you probably never thought about before. Let me get out of this for a second. So when you're driving, if we were to put our arms out like this, so I've got my arms out. Oh, it's good to stretch. If I was to move my fingers, I'm going to get them a little bit closer so you can see in the camera. All right. Right now, I've got my hands right near my shoulders, and I'm moving my fingers, okay? I can see my hands and the fingers moving. So this is my peripheral vision. So peripheral vision is 180. So if we go back to that slide, if we were to cut the car just about where the front windshield up at the top is, that is your 180-degree peripheral vision. And by the way, I want you to write down, peripheral vision only provides 2 things. Peripheral vision provides movement and it provides motion. Okay? Color and motion, color and motion. So when my hands are moving like this, if someone was standing next to me and they were holding up fingers, I wouldn't know how many fingers. I could see that they would be moving, and I could tell it's a flesh color. So I could see the color, I can see the movement, but I don't see details. So what I would have to do is I'd have to look and go, oh, 3. So the middle of your eye, okay, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later tonight, middle of your eye is for like reading. That's your focal vision. That's your detail part, right? So you've got left front, front, right front. You got back, rear, a left rear, and right rear. So anytime someone is moving into one of those quadrants, you should know about it. This is why we have side mirrors, rear view mirrors, is that we're checking constantly. We need to know. So if someone is getting too close in the right rear portion of our vehicle, if we're on a highway, we can make a lane change to the front left. If someone's getting too close in the front, we can go to the brake and back off and make sure we have that 4 seconds. The only area that you have complete control over is the front of your car. You have no control over the back of your car. None. Zippo. This is why tailgating is so dangerous. A lot of people say, "Oh, Mr. Toll, I'm getting tailgated. I'm a little bit nervous. The car's too close to me. How about if I speed up?" Well, yeah, you can speed up a little bit, but guess what? The car behind you can speed up. So you can never go fast enough maybe for that person because they'll just match your speed. Now, let's just flip that equation. Let's say that you're in front, you're behind somebody and they're in front of you and you feel uncomfortable how close you're getting. You just use your brake and go slower, and then they're going to go further up the road. And now you don't have 4 seconds. Now you've got 5 or 6. They go slower. You can even go slower than they're going. So now you've got 6 or 7. So the only area that you have complete control over is your front. So just remember that. Now, it's very difficult to see this picture. I want you to try to take a guess of how many people are outside of a vehicle. And I'm talking way down the road. So you're going to have to squint and really look. And just put the comments on the YouTube. So those of you that are on the YouTube comments, put down how many people you think that are outside of the vehicle. So I'm talking sidewalks, crosswalks, anybody that's outside of a vehicle. Try to count them the best you can. All right? Because I'm going to make a little diagram here, and then I'm going to show you the diagram. So write it down. I'm going to give you about a minute. So give me an answer. How many people do you see outside of the car? You're close, Haley. You're close. Hey, Kathy got it right. Kathy's got the right answer. The correct answer is 7. 7 people. Okay? The person that most people are missing, let's see if I can get on the screen here. See if I can get on. So it's 7 people. Most people miss the in the white door over here. There's a person opening up the door and has his hand on the ladder. A lot of people miss that. But there are 2 people to the left. And then there are 5 people up near the crosswalk and the sidewalks way up at the top. All right. Let me get out of here for a second. So while you are answering that question, I want you to diagram a roadway. And there are 5 positions that I want you to be familiar with. All right. So the very bottom right here is being centered. So we've got equal distance, maybe 2 feet, 3 feet from the white line, 2-3 feet from the left yellow line. All right. So that's being centered. You're probably doing about 85-90% of your driving being centered on the road. Then you've got 2 spots just off to the sides, right of center, left of center, very close to the yellow line or very close to the white line, but you're not on them. So make sure you understand that. Now, why would you go left of center or right of center? The main reason would be making a turn. I want to see you change your position on the roadway when you make a right-hand turn, make a left-hand turn. So look for the break in the line and go left of center on a left turn, right of center for a right turn. Far left, far right, this is where you're going over the yellow line or going over the white line. If you go over the white line, it could be maybe something came off a vehicle. Maybe there was a big pothole. Someone's texting and driving, and they're going over the yellow line, so you're trying to get as far away from them as possible. Far left could be a mail truck, UPS truck, could be a pothole, could be a bicyclist. So there are reasons why you're changing your location in your lane. Okay, so make a little star in your notes, and I want you to understand on your driving test, they want to see you go left of center and right of center on your turns. They want to see a change of speed and change of position. Okay, you're sliding your vehicle within your lane when you're getting ready to make your turn. Just don't make it from the middle of your roadway, right? Show them that you learned something here in driver's ed. Let's see what we got here. So 7 people. Oh, there's the positions right there. Why did I have to draw it? I forgot that I had it as a slide. So there's a good example. That's what it looks like. They did a much better job. Boy, I'm glad the DMV makes these good little slides here. So that's the position that I want you to be familiar with, all right? Now, let's talk about Chapter 6 in the responsible driving. There are 5 terms that we're going to be covering relatively quickly. Actually 6. Visual acuity, distance vision, depth perception, central vision, and peripheral we basically already touched upon. Now, I don't want you to write everything down, all right? But I do want you to write down visual acuity because we did mention that your eyes are so important for driving. And all I want you to write down with visual acuity is put down seeing items sharp and clear. So when you're driving, you need to see things, sharp items, see the traffic light, see the stop sign, see the car coming from the left, sharp and clear. Anytime you've got blurry vision, there's a delay in your mind processing, is that really a person? Is that car really moving? And you're losing vital time. Now here's an example. If you're going 30 miles per hour with really good vision, 20/20, you can read a 6-inch street sign from a distance of about 180, 225 feet away. And that really translates into about 4 or 5 seconds. If your vision is poor, which 24 vision is the bare minimum that you can go for your driver's test and still pass, you have to be within 90 feet, 135 feet, or 2 or 3 seconds away to read the same sign. Less distance, less time, unreliable decisions. That's a fact. It's a fact. Distance vision. If your distance vision is poor, you may not see hazards until it's too late to react safely. Now, this could be maybe the inside of the windshield hasn't been cleaned for a while. Maybe the condition of your glasses are kind of smudgy. Poor distance vision and excessive speed increases risk of making unreliable judgments with potentially disastrous results. So people that can't judge distances usually have some major problems with turns because they come into the turn, or stopping. They come into stopping way too hot, way too hard. Depth perception is important for following other cars, pulling out into traffic, stopping in front of people or behind people. Some people have a real issue with this. You can get better learning reference points on your vehicle that will help you know when it's time to do certain things. But depth perception on people are going to bump into curbs or bump into cars because they have no idea, especially in parking lots, how close they really are. Now, I'm going to do a little experiment here with you. So I want you to do this on your phone, okay? So make sure that you write down make sure that you do this on your phone, all right? I am going to show you a picture, and I'm going to put it on the board here for about 3 seconds, and then I'm going to take it off. And I want you to write at least 3 things that you see in the picture, okay? So here we go. I'm going to put it on for 3 seconds. I'll count, and then I'm going to take it off. 1, 2, 3. What did you see? Okay, write it down. I want to see it coming over on my phone in a moment. So give me 3 things that you see. So far, people are sending it in. Doing good. Keep it coming. Okay, I'm going to go back to the picture. Okay, I've got enough of you that are responding. So far, not too bad. All right, let me go back to the picture. You are all correct. We have people, we have a beach, we have like it could be an island, we've got water, we've got a tree, we've got rocks. We've got all those things. All those things, you are correct. But what if I was to tell you that this picture was of a baby? This picture was a picture of a baby, and they added all the things that you wrote. They drew into the picture to take your attention away from the baby. How many? Write down if you can see the baby. Let's see how many people can see it before I explain where it is. That is a picture of a baby. The thing is that when you're driving, you may think that you're picking up all the information correctly, and you're going, oh yeah, I can see everything on the road. I know what I should be doing. But you would be surprised how many things are hidden in our driving that we don't see. We need to get a bigger picture of what is happening. Now, there are 2 terms that I want you to write down. So write this down. I want you to write down inattention blindness. Inattention blindness is the failure by a person to notice something that is in plain sight. Yeah, the baby was kind of in between the branches and the sand. So a lot of people miss it. So you're not the only ones. I usually get most of my classes missing it. Okay, so I want you to write down inattention blindness is the failure by a person to notice something. You don't have to put down stimulus. That is in plain sight. That's all I want you to write down. Inattention blindness is failure by a person to notice something that is in plain sight. This stimulus is usually unexpected, but it's fully visible. It typically happens because we are overloaded with inputs. It's impossible to pay attention to every single input that is presented. A person's attention cannot be focused on everything. Therefore, everyone experiences inattentional blindness. Now, you're going to find this hard to believe, but I'm going to put this out here. And I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to, call you out, but I will tell you that at least half of you, we've got 14 in class, there's at least half of you that when you're driving with me at some point, you will probably run a stop sign. And you're probably thinking, oh, it's not going to be me, Mr. Toll. I know what a stop sign looks like. There's no way I'm going to go right through a stop sign or go beyond where I should stop. Oh, yes, you will. Oh, yes, you will. Inattention blindness happens to everybody. You could be thinking about something, looking a different way. The sign is right there in front of you, and you're just not going to see it. Just like that baby was right in that picture. Now, when I showed you that picture, it wouldn't have been better for me to say, okay, I'm going to show you a picture, and in that picture, there is going to be a picture of a baby. Find the baby. Because you're looking for it. Of course you're going to find it. That's what the task that you've been asked to do. When you're driving, no one's going to say, okay, find the stop sign, find the traffic light. I mean, they may do that when you begin to drive. But how often when you drive with your parents or drive with me now, I don't say a lot. I may say, go up to the intersection, take a left, take a right, or we're heading back to school. I'm not going to tell you where every single stop sign is. And by the way, I've had some of you, because we've driven a few times now, I've had a couple of you in a parking lot try to go out the wrong way in a parking lot because you weren't reading your signs or reading your pavement markings. That's an example of inattention blindness. Let me show you an example, and you're going to find this very hard to believe.
The difference between these two men seems obvious.
Don't they look different?
Their faces are different.
Yeah.
Their hair is different. Even their shirts are a different color.
So we know that.
And yet an experiment by psychologists Dan Simons and Chris Chabris at Harvard reveals that our brains actually process very little of what comes in through the eyes.
In this experiment, a subject comes up to a counter and a first experimenter hands them a consent form. As soon as they finish signing the consent form, they hand it back to the first experimenter, who then takes the consent form, ducks down behind the counter to put it away, and a different experimenter then stands up and hands the subject a packet of information and sends them into a hallway where we ask them questions about it.
This wonderful experiment uncovers an aspect of the brain's attention system known as change blindness.
Change blindness is the idea that we often miss large changes to our visual world from one view to the next. We're often not able to see large changes that would appear to be perfectly obvious to somebody who knows they're going to happen.
And incredibly, in 75% of cases, the subjects don't notice a thing.
The lady who took me up here, she opened the door for me and told me to walk over to the desk.
This form.
All right. I think there was a sign that said experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And a man there gave me a form to sign.
Mm-hmm.
There was the guy standing under a big sign that said experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And to my left, there was like a pot with some dirt in it and some plastic containers. Is it the fifth?
Yes. Oh, I filled out a form.
Okay.
Right.
This form. How long would it be about before it's...
And I asked him how long it would take. He said about 10, 15 minutes or so.
I guess I have the time to do that.
Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
I just signed it, and I didn't even pay attention to anything that was written on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
After you handed it back to him, did you notice anything unusual happen at all?
If you could just take this into the next room.
No, I probably wasn't even looking that direction. I probably turned and looked towards the clear door. I saw some people there.
Okay.
Then I turned back and looked at him for a second.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
No.
This is only going to take 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah, it'll be real short.
Okay.
The person who stood up was actually a different person.
Okay.
I gather you didn't notice that was different? A different person actually stood up and handed you this form and sent you out toward me. I gather from your action you didn't notice that?
No.
Okay. Don't feel bad about that. Actually, most of the time, we find about 75% of people don't notice.
You serious?
Yeah. The person who stood up with the packet was actually a different person.
Wow.
Than the first person.
That is incredible.
So I gather you didn't see it then?
I didn't catch that, no.
Okay. What's really interesting is that some people notice these changes and other people don't notice these changes.
Okay, if you could just take this.
And we really don't yet have a good idea what separates those people who don't from those people who do. It might be that there are individual differences and some people are better able to detect these sorts of changes. But it's also possible that it's just coincidence, that the people who noticed it just happened to be focusing on a feature that changed. They just happened to be paying attention to the color of the person's shirt. And the people who failed to notice it just happened to be paying attention to something.
Now, one of the problems with inattention blindness, and they called it change blindness too. Inattention blindness means it's something that's there, it's static, meaning that it's not moving, it's not. What you saw in that video was change blindness, where there was one image and then they replaced it with another image, like the two males. This is why being on your cell phone while you're driving is so dangerous, because think about it. All of a sudden you receive a phone call. You look down because you think you have a green light. You're going through a green light. So you look down at your phone, then you look back up. You're still assuming it's a green light. But guess what? Things could have changed. It could have turned to red. A bicyclist could have come out in front of you. A car could have started to slow down and stop. That's why change blindness is so dangerous. That it could be concentration too. Like they said, it just could be that a person just notices that there's a change of color of that person's shirt. I thought it was yellow. Now it's blue. Wait a minute here. Something just isn't right. And you could see that the young ladies were kind of giggling because they go, okay, I see what this experiment's all about. Okay, you can't fool me. Now you know what I'm looking for. Now you know what we're talking about. So let's play a game. Let's find out how observant you are. I'm going to show you another video, and you're going to tell me how many things have changed. Okay, you ready to go? Here we go. Let's watch this video.
Watch this next sequence carefully. At the end, I'll ask you a question about what you've seen.
Hi, I'm Magic Singh, and today we're in Portobello Road, and I'm going to show you guys a classic in magic, using matches. And today to help me out is Mark. Mark, tell you what, place your hand up for me nice and flat. Now, I promise this won't hurt, all right? So here's the idea. Let's just light this up, and if you close onto that nice and tight, here we go. Watch this.
Keep watching.
Don't know if you felt that or not. I'll tell you what, have a look inside. Open it up. See how the match is actually returned into the book, and it's still burnt. Okay, you're not impressed. All right, it was my first trick ever. But here's the idea. Just place that back in your hand, close it tight, and turn it face down again if you can. Now we're going to use one more thing, and we're going to use a magician's best friend, playing cards. Now the idea is really simple. You're going to choose one, so take any one you like. Perfect. Have a look for yourself, and do me a favor, show the camera as well if you can. Brilliant. And you know what? Place it back face up on the deck. Now, it doesn't matter if I see what the card is, because we're going to do something completely different. Just watch this. Here we go. I'll do it slowly. Watch the king. I don't know if you felt that or not. Tell you what, have a look inside. Open it up.
Oh.
Check it out.
It's the King of Diamonds. It's my card.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Did you watch the trick closely? This is a famous illusion called inattention blindness. This illusion is not about the magic. While watching the routine, you may or may not have noticed the changes taking place. The question is, how many changes did you see?
Okay, so this is where you got to step in. I'm not going to show you what the multiple choices are. I'm going to just ask you, okay? In the comment section on YouTube here or on the phone, I want you to write down how many changes did you see? Okay, some people are answering. Okay, I saw that answer. Okay, you gotta give me an answer. I gotta see that you're here participating. Keep it coming. So far, Emily has got it right. Emily, you are spot on. Not very many people get it correct. Kyle, not too bad. Okay, everybody seems to be going with the 2. Grace has got 4. Henry's got 1. All right. The correct answer is 3. Let's see the rest of the video.
Was there 1? Were there 3? Or were there 5? The answer is there were 3 changes. The first change was the red hanky to a green one. The second was his shirt swapping to a t-shirt. The last was his assistant becoming a completely different person. How many did you see? So why is it that you didn't see these big changes? And the reason is that the brain receives so much information on its eyes that you can't see everything simultaneously. So instead it picks and chooses according to what it thinks is important. If you change something that it doesn't think is important, you just literally don't see it.
Okay. I've got one last one to show you. So you're getting the whole idea is that we think that we're watching something. We think we know what is happening, but in reality, there are things we're missing. We're going to try to move you to be a better driver coming out of driver's ed. So when we drive, we're going to start thinking about, we know where the yellow line is. We know where the white edge line is. We know probably crosswalks and some of the major signs we pick up quite easily. So what I'm going to challenge you with is start thinking beyond what you see and start coming up with what you think is changing or could change. And I'll guarantee it will make you a better driver. It is going to be you're going to be looking like between parked cars. You're going to be looking closer to maybe bushes and trees off to the side. You're going to be looking for vehicles that are coming up behind you, not just behind you, but 2 or 3 cars behind you because they're going faster than everybody. Like if we're on a highway and you're thinking they're going to be an issue to us in the next 2-3 seconds. So I challenge you to be a better driver that way. So let's watch one more final video on inattention blindness. It's pretty cool.
You are about to take part in a quick experiment. Take a look at this. Okay, now, did you happen to notice anything odd? Watch again. See any changes?
Don't worry if you didn't see that it's 2 different men. It means your brain is doing exactly what it should be. It's focusing on the meaning of the scene rather than on the irrelevant details.
Imagine how much energy and brain mass it would take for us to remember every single person, place, or thing we encountered. The things that matter, a conversation with a coworker, your child's first step, would be drowned by a deluge of information. So when there are minor changes to the world around us, we often don't pick up on them. There are 2 similar phenomena at work.
Inattentional blindness is the failure to notice something that's fully obvious right there in front of you when your attention is engaged on something or someone else. Change blindness is a failure to notice a difference between what's there right now and what was there a moment ago.
Scientists such as Daniel Simons from the University of Illinois have spent years devising experiments testing just how perceptive, and unperceptive humans actually are.
So we feel like we're aware of everything, that we're taking in all of the details, and that if something important happens, we'll automatically notice it. It'll capture our attention. The reality is that we often don't notice unexpected things because we're aware of far less of our world than we think we are.
So how much or how little are we actually aware of? We decided to recreate one of Simon's most famous experiments to see for ourselves. Here's the setup.
Our senior series producer Vin poses as a lost pedestrian and asks a passerby for directions.
Excuse me, I'm looking for the skyline.
Then, we break the two up, walking through them holding a large sheet of wood. Now watch as I replace Vin. You might think people would notice the switch, but almost half the time, they didn't. Of course, that means more than half the time they did. We only tried the experiment 9 times, and by no means was it good science, but we were surprised 4 people didn't notice the switch. In Simon's original experiment, 7 out of 15 people didn't either. So what determines whether or not you can figure out the switch?
When you look at another person, you encode what's relevant for what you're doing right then, in that case, giving directions, and you don't pay attention to the details that are irrelevant, say what color their shirt is or exactly how tall they are. As long as you are able to make sense of the meaning of the scene and roughly the main categories of that person, say their height, their age, what race they are, what sex they are, as long as those important things don't change, the meaning of the scene really hasn't changed and you're not going to notice that anything's different.
Scientists have documented inattentional and change blindness since the 1970s, and while they allow you to focus your attention, this failure to see every detail can prove costly. Drivers often cause accidents because they overlook quick changes to their environments, such as pedestrians or cyclists. Faulty memories can wreak havoc during eyewitness testimony.
The goal of vision isn't to build a photograph or a complete model of the world in your mind. The goal of vision is to make sense of the meaning of the world around you. Being aware of our limitations can help us adapt and compensate for them, allowing us to do things that prevent the really negative consequences that can happen due to failures of awareness.
For example, Simons thinks that people might be willing to put away their cell phone when driving if they just understood the limits to their attention. Juries might realize that eyewitness testimony is far from ideal. And the next time you and a friend are fighting about the details of a past event, it's likely you're both wrong. Now that's something to remember.
So you can see how important it is for vision to play an integral part into driving, because our eyes can play games with us. So we need to really figure out what's going on out there on the roadway. These are all the videos that I had loaded in on my laptop. We talked about peripheral vision. Okay, let's talk about these 4 things, then we'll call it a night. Color vision, night vision, glare vision. Color vision. You must be able to recognize traffic signs, signals, pavement markings, turn signals, hazard lights, backup lights, brake lights. Make a note in your notes that you need to know all your colors of your lights on your vehicle. You'd be surprised how many people don't know what color the hazard lights are or what color lights your backup lights are. Okay, so we know brake lights are red, hazard lights or emergency flashers, they're the same thing, are yellow. Your backup lights are white. Okay, so you make sure you know the color of your lights because it's communicating to something to you. Now, people that are colorblind, my son-in-law is colorblind. How do they drive? How do they know that it's a green light or a red light or whatever? They know by the intensity of the location of the light. So is it the light at the top that's changing or is on? Is it the one in the middle that's on? So they can basically tell by how bright it is, right? But they may not really see. They may see like in grays. They don't see true color. So people that are colorblind can still drive. Night vision, and this is why the state wants you to do some driving at night before you go for your license. For those of you that drive with me at 4 o'clock, you know it gets pretty dark. Your field of vision, your peripheral vision is not as good. This is why having your high beams on at times will open up the road for you so you can pick up information. Usually as you get older, your eyes get worse, especially driving at night, or night in the rain is the worst. Maybe your parents hate doing that. That's kind of a double whammy when you're driving in the rain at night. Other concerns would be glare from headlights, and this is why we got to dim our headlights. People that have dark windshields or poorly aimed, dirty headlights, their vision is not going to be the best. And as we said before, it's going to slow the mind down processing what needs to be done. And driving at night, you're going to have to go slower because at daytime you can process things so much quicker. Glare vision, this is why I recommend having sunglasses with you when you come drive with me, especially around 3 o'clock. That's probably the worst time of the day, or right around 8 o'clock. I know Matt drove this morning. Sun was pretty bright, just a little after 8 o'clock in the direction that we were driving. So kind of focus your attention off to the right side of the road, never right at where the glare is coming from. Use the sun visor, but sunglasses are very important. And when you're around water, or even in the wintertime after the snow, if it's really, really bright sunlight, it's going to be like a whiteout. It's going to be extremely hard to see. So it'd be a shame for you to, hit a bicyclist or a pedestrian because your vision is so poor. So have things in the vehicle and utilize things in the vehicle to make you a better, safer driver. Why is it important to communicate to people? Because you want to be courteous. You want to be cooperative. That's how we're going to get around in this world, is that everybody knows that we're all going to a place. We're going to get there eventually. Let's not, be too aggressive. So having signals on, having your lights on, it does reduce anxiety and stress, and it helps other people. It really does. It's just the way that we want to learn how to drive. Now, untimely or non-communications will mean that you're a competitive, aggressive type of driver, very uncooperative. They stand right out in a driving environment. It decreases the amount of time other people need to see you and understand what you're going to do. And a lot of times it requires a reaction rather than a response. Driving is a lot easier if you're responding to someone with a signal on rather than reacting to someone that doesn't. It takes you by surprise. People that don't use communication, they increase our stress and anxiety. And it gets people a little edgy, and people will take risk when it comes to driving. So how can we communicate better out on the roadway? Use our headlights. We want to be seen. That's why we have our headlights on during the day. We want to use our signal at least 3 to 5 seconds before we make a turn. And I told a lot of you, it's better to have your signal on and not need it than to need your signal and not have it on. Brake lights, my philosophy, if you see it's a red light or a stop sign, brake early. Don't ever rush up to a red light or a stoplight. Just doesn't make any sense. Backup lights will warn people that you're backing out of a parking spot, especially on a busy road. Don't be afraid to use your horn, because the minute someone beeps a horn, people are going to go to their brake pedal. They know there's something that they probably don't see, and they're going to go, where's that coming from? I will probably bet there'll be nobody from this class that uses their horn. If your signals aren't working, you should know your hand signals. What is right, what is left, what is slow and stop. In some states, they actually test you on that. When you go for your driver's test, they have you roll down the window and they say, okay, signal a left-hand turn. How would you indicate that you're stopping? We already talked about lane position. We talked about the different, center, right of center, left of center, far left, far right. And then, of course, your speed. Coming into a turn tonight, we talked about braking at least until your body gets beyond that middle portion of that turn. All these things are communicating to people. Your position on the roadway, your speed, how you're using your lights. So we're trying to make you a better driver. But there are going to be times when you make mistakes. So you forget to do some of these things and people get upset at you. you're rushing, you're too late, so you don't think it's that important to use a signal. Don't put your headlights on, things like that. Now, there's some of you that will give wrong information. There's nothing worse than putting your right signal on and turning left. Okay? I could care less. If I say take a right and you put your left signal on and you turn left, I really don't care because you signaled left and you went left. It's terrible when people put their right signal on and then they turn left. People don't like that. Okay? You'll be involved in a crash one of these days if you do that. So I want you to think about this. It's better to have your signal lights on and not need them than to need them and not have them on. That's one of my famous sayings when you're out with me driving. So if you want to use your signal, you're not quite sure, go ahead, do it. I'll never question it. All right? And nor would the state. I'd rather have them overused than underused. All right? So that is basically it for tonight. I'm going to put on Facebook page, I'll have to send it to you, Ty, anybody else that wants it. There are some questions I think I had for chapter 6 and 7 that I'm going to post it probably tomorrow morning. I won't do it tonight. What I want you to do tonight, or you can even do it tomorrow if you want, since you got a snow day. Tomorrow's class is probably one of the most important classes that we have. It's going to be on signal, signs, and pavement markings. We didn't get into turning. I may save that for next week sometime. Maybe we'll do it on Monday. Remember, next week will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But I didn't get into turning tonight per se, according to the manual. So I am lagging a little bit behind, but I do want to get into sign, signals, and pavement markings for tomorrow. If you want to drive Friday or Saturday, please text me, let me know, and I'll try to work you into a schedule. I'll remind you tomorrow. We are having class tomorrow night, even though I know you're having a snow day at school, I think. So enjoy your time out, helping your parents shovel and plow. And if you're able to get out and have some fun in the snow, by all means do that. But we are on a mission to get our classes in, so we're going to plow ahead with class tomorrow night. But that is it for tonight. So thank you for tuning in, and hope you took some good notes because we got a lot of information that we went over, and the midterm is next week. So study during the weekend. So we'll see you tomorrow at 7:30. Have a good night.